Let's just go.
We're going to go over how we can create a table of values for a given equation. So we're going to start with a simpler example. We have the equation y equals 3x minus 1. This is simpler because the y, which we're going to be trying to find, is already all by itself. And we'll get a harder one after. So it looks pretty complicated first because we've got this blank table. You can actually pick any x number that you want. You can pick 1,000, 100, negative 50, doesn't matter what x numbers you pick. But I would keep them simple since you're going to be potentially graphing these for most problems later as well. So I'm going to pick the numbers -1, 0, 1, and 2. And we might not plug all of these in, but these are some typical numbers that you would usually see people choose when they're doing these problems. So I'm going to go over to my equation, and I'm going to start with my -1, and these are my x values. So every time I go to my equation, when I see the x, I'm going to replace it with whatever x I'm working on. I'm working on -1 right now. So I've got y equals 3, and remember 3x means 3 times x, so 3 times x, now I've got 3 times, I'm going to replace that x with the -1, 3 times -1, and then I just drop down that -1. And then we're going to use order of operations to solve. 3 times -1 is -3, drop down the -1, -3 minus 1 is -4. So then we take that back into our table, and when I plugged in -1, I got -4 for my y. And then I repeat for my next, I got 0 for the next x. So y equals 3 times, and then I replace x with 0 this time, bring down the -1. Order of operations, multiply 3 times 0 is 0, drop down the -1, 0 minus 1 is -1, and I add that answer to my table. If I plug in 0, I get out a -1. And then I keep repeating, and every time I'm replacing the x, because that's what values we are picking. We're picking the x values. And we go down our list, so next I would replace 1 for x, and next I would replace 2 for x, and so on. Let's look at one that might be a little bit harder. So let's say I have the equation 2x plus 8y equals 4. And we're going to pick the numbers 0 and 1. And we'll see how much time we have to do one or both of those. So let's start by plugging in x is 0. So in place of x, I'm going to make it 0. So 2x means 2 times x. So 2 times 0. And then I drop everything else down. Plus 8y equal to 4. And then I'm going to start solving this equation. 2 times 0 is 0. Plus 8y equals 4. Normally, with this 0, I'd have to get rid of it, but 0 is kind of already gone. 0 plus 8y is really just 8y, because 0 plus anything is the other thing. Drop down my equal to 4. 8 is being multiplied by y. The opposite of multiplying is to divide, so we'll divide by 8. And then y equals, I can leave it as 4 over 8. I could reduce it down to 1/2, or I could put in the calculator 4 divided by 8 is 0.5. Either of those answers will be just fine. I'm going to use 0.5. Now we're going to plug in 1 in place of the x. So I go back up to my original problem, and I'm going to replace that x with a 1 this time. So 2 times 1 plus 8y is equal to 4. And then we use order of operations again to multiply. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 8y equals 4. Now I've got to do solving a two-step problem. I gotta move the 2 to the other side. So opposite of a positive 2 is a negative 2. That makes 0. 2 minus 2 makes 0. Always check that makes 0. So I'm left with 8y is equal to 4 minus 2 is 2. And then just like we did before, this is multiplying by 8, so we have to divide by 8. So y equals 2/8, or I could reduce that down to 1/4. Or if I put 2 divided by 8 in the calculator, I get 0.25. Any of those answers would be fine. Depends on what makes it easier for you to graph if we were to graph this. So that's the process. We just take any x number we want. We tend to pick the easier, smaller numbers that we can also put them on a graph. And you plug them in, solve the equation.